Okay, we're going to start up. We're going to zoom in to the conference. Kurt Wiebe. Kurt grew up in northern Indiana next to the shores of Lake Michigan. He spent 4 years of duty in Turkey and Japan with the intelligence arm of the United States Air Force from 1963 to 1967. In 1964, he got a master's degree in Russian language, and then after that, he started in the NSA. He led a team at that time when he was in NSA of analysts, and they were cited for their Meritorious Civilian Service Award by the CIA. He has, since retiring in 2001, he retired in October 31st, 2001, he joined Bill Binney and Ed Loomis, and they started a consulting business. And mentioning Bill Binney originally was going to be here. Bill Binney is a great American. They did a movie on him called The Good American, and his really good buddy and friend is Kurt Wiebe, and they're both fellow whistleblowers and both NSA officers and National Security Administration officers. Now Bill Binney and Ed Loomis and Kurt Wiebe, they started a business. And in 2002, when the NSA was moving in the wrong direction, they met a woman named Diana Rourke from the House Select Committee on Intelligence, and they made a complaint about the mismanagement of waste of hundreds of millions of dollars and the illegal surveillance that NSA was doing of all American citizens. Now, they talked to 2 congressmen about it who were connected to the House Select Committee of Intelligence, and they sent a letter to the Chief Justice of the Supreme Court, and asking for accountability for the NSA, and they got no response except being basically persecuted by the government. They are advocates for legislation to rein in the NSA's violations of all of our rights, our United States Constitution rights. And he's appeared, this is Kurt, on CBS, 60 Minutes, PBS Frontline, Fox News Channel, Sean Hannity, Megyn Kelly, Neil Cavuto Show, and I'd like to introduce to you, from Maryland, another good American and a great patriot, Kurt Wiebe.
Okay, good afternoon to all the viewers and those in attendance, and God bless the victims of 9/11 and their families. None of you can imagine the horror that went through my heart and mind on that tragic day, and I knew it could have been prevented. What caused that not to be prevented? Human ego, arrogance, people that thought they knew more and they didn't, people more concerned with big budgets than mission accomplishment, the same old follies that man always fails at. There's no new paradigm here. It's the same old problem. Unfortunately, the government has a responsibility to protect its citizens, not to mismanage the efforts designed to do that. I want you to know that Bill Binney, my colleague, close friend, had quadruple bypass surgery last week, and he's doing absolutely wonderfully. In fact, I probably rushed it a little bit when I asked Bill yesterday if he would join me in going out for a drive, and maybe we'd stop somewhere and get a bite to eat. He was desperate to get out. As you know, you come out of a hospital, you don't get much sleep because they're always prodding you and asking questions. So when he got home, the first day, he slept like a baby. But then after a couple of days, you know, he started getting restless, and it's amazing the technology in open heart surgery and how they minimize pain and the whole procedure. And I just salute the doctors at University of Maryland Hospital in Baltimore, who also put 2 stents in my heart. So I appreciate what they do on both counts. Anyway, I picked up Bill. He said, let's go. And he carefully, I pushed him out in the wheelchair, and he carefully got into the front seat. And I said, Bill, how do you feel? You know, and I have visions of wire holding his chest cage together at the sternum. And he says, it's a little sore, but I'm okay. And you know, he's a double amputee just below the knee. And he swung his legs in and fastened his safety belt, and we were off to the Olive Garden. That's not an advertisement. It was just a convenient place to go. So anyway, he enjoyed a nice Italian meal. And we talked at some length about current problems. You know, problems keep coming. So I'm not going to go into those, except to say we are now very focused on trying to secure the integrity of the elections process in the United States. And I'm talking about the equipment and the process that must be guarded and secured to make people's vote count. So keep track of that if you can. Anyway, Bill said, all right, let's go out. I want to go over here and visit some place, a store or something. And we did that briefly. And then we went back on the way towards his house. And he says, Kirk, I got a taste for a hamburger. So I took him to McDonald's. He said, order me a vanilla milkshake and a cheeseburger. Within 30 minutes, he regretted that decision. A little GI upset, let's say. Too much rich food, too quickly, too soon. So he won't be doing that again for a while. So on to 9/11 and the purpose of our visit here today. 8 months before 9/11, a full 8 months, Bill approached the analysis office for the Middle East. We knew terrorism was brewing. We knew there was a threat, albeit somewhat generalized. We didn't have specifics. And Bill knew, we knew, that the key would be to detect communications about any intention to attack the United States. In fact, that's NSA's mission. Foreign intelligence for threats designed to attack the United States, its allies, or assets abroad. So Bill said, we have this new capability that can go on the internet and pull meaningful data from it quickly. But we need to know where in the world we should put this device. So please look into your knowledge base and guide us. Bill came out of that meeting with 9 sites. I'm not at liberty to say what they were, but there were 9. Management said, how much will it cost you to deploy this? And I think we said $1.9 million. Not big dollars. And so we tried to make plans to deploy it to those 9 sites, and management wouldn't let us do it. Now, imagine the shock of having a tool, a capability to put into the fight on terror and being told you cannot use it. And we couldn't figure out why. Later on, in a meeting when we were still trying to push this solution to get out into the toolbox of NSA, we invited the deputy director of NSA down to see the breakthroughs we had made, the technical breakthroughs that allowed us to select data very carefully from the internet. And that's a tough chore. It's like trying to sip from a fire hose. Lots of data. How do you pull out just what you need and not collect unnecessary data like the private data of innocent Americans, indeed, innocent people globally? The more you collect innocent people, the more that data gets in the way of finding the real threat. And we understood that from the dynamics of studying the internet and the difficulties that it posed. So we invited Deputy Director down thinking for sure he will back the general adoption of the technology. When he saw the briefing, it only took about 15 minutes, he said, "My God, you guys have made major breakthroughs. Why are you being so quiet?" We weren't being quiet. We were being opposed from within by management, by other technical offices. There's a bad culture in government agencies where competition, the wrong kind, I need to be in the limelight, you need to be in the dark shadows, that kind of thing, rather than focusing on the technologies and the solutions that offer the most promise for mission accomplishment. That basically took us down. There was one more factor that prevented us from succeeding. When the deputy director told the director, Michael V. Hayden, Lieutenant General, United States Air Force, what he had seen, he essentially told Bill Black, the then deputy director, to shut up. That he had been arguing and pleading in front of Congress for a budget of some $4 billion to modernize NSA, and that what we had developed would undermine that budget. Now, imagine that kind of rationale. What are we here to do? We're here to protect America, not build budgets unnecessarily to satisfy the egos of general rank officers who always measure their career by the size of the budgets they command. So our solution, called Thin Thread, and there were a couple other small programs attached to it that made it more useful for analysis and rapid discovery of threats. The data access component was squashed and thrown out. And the director fielded a program called Trailblazer that cost billions of dollars, and that by 2005 was declared an utter failure. Now, let that sink in a minute. Not only did they thwart the deployment of the solution that could have prevented 9/11, but they did not field an alternative capability even after 4.5 years. What does that mean in terms of loss of intelligence or intelligence opportunities missed? As you know, in the digital age, things change quickly. New communications capabilities come on, new social networks. You know the burgeoning, the blossoming of the internet and all the capabilities that came with it. This conferencing that we're doing right now, enabled by the internet. Things were growing at a tremendous rate. In fact, they say that an internet year, as opposed to a calendar year, is maybe 3x, because the speed of change is so rapid. At least it was at that time. So NSA lost tremendous volumes of intelligence as its targets also were moving from point-to-point communications, the old way of communicating, to packetized data communications. In other words, something called TCP/IP or the internet. They were also jumping onto the internet, and without a capability, NSA was actually going deaf. And I have to be honest with you, since retiring, I don't know where they are today. I pray some sensibilities have come to those in charge. But what I am most concerned about is the older I get and the more that time passes and the more we read in the news, we now find that surveillance capabilities were actually weaponized by an administration against another, a president-elect. And you know that investigation is ongoing right now. We are eager and we wish Attorney General Barr and his prosecutor, John Dunham, all Godspeed and success, because this attack on our form of government using intelligence tools that we played some role in developing at NSA when we were there is nothing more than a coup attempt. In fact, I noticed the news networks won't call it sedition. If you look under United States Code, there's a law governing sedition, and it defines it as any conspiracy that attempts to overthrow the United States government. My goodness, this is appearing to be a classic conspiracy. All the data is not in. But when it comes in, I think we are going to be shocked and see that we were threatened with the most serious threat to our form of government in this country's history. What that underlies is that there are people in government, people in society that are willing to throw the law out the window, completely out the window. You know, we find ourselves saying, how can so many people be indicted, at least by circumstantial evidence, if not actual evidence, and go scot-free? Nothing happens to them. Justice is never realized. And so we have a problem in the country with corruption in various realms within government and society. Cheating, corruption has grown rampant. And I dare say, all that is necessary for evil to succeed, quoting Edmund Burke, is for good men to do nothing. And I reach out to each of you, again, in memory of those who died on 9/11, and in recognition of the tremendous hurt that their families have gone through, undescribable. I beg you to stand up, take a stand against corruption. And I think it'll improve our way of life here in this country. And I thank you very much for allowing me to talk to you today.
Our next speaker is very well known in the area too. He's from New York City area, and that's Mark Crispin Miller. Mark is a professor. Mark is a professor of media studies at New York University. I actually went to graduate school at NYU, and is the author of a book, Fooled Again: How the Right Stole the 2004 Elections. He is known for his writing on American media and for his activism on behalf of democratic media reform. His books include Boxed In, The Culture of TV Seeing Through Movies, and Mad Scientist, A Study of War Propaganda. He graduated from Northwestern University with a BA in 1971, Johns Hopkins University with an MA in 1973 and a PhD in 1977. Welcome, Mark Crispin Miller.
Okay, I did not run my notes past the lawyers' committee, so you can't blame them for anything I'm about to say. I was asked to talk about intelligence strategies utilized to undermine legitimate, criticism, right. Is that better? You can hear me now? Yeah, I was asked to talk about intelligence strategies utilized to undermine legitimate criticism. Now, I could talk about that subject for a whole semester, and I'm doing that now at NYU, but I only have 20 or so minutes to try to do it here. So I'm just going to mention two such strategies very quickly and then focus on a third. The first of those intelligence strategies, and this is something that Gary just essentially talked about, is censorship through control of the press. The American media has long since been kind of taken over by the intelligence establishment, and that's especially true of the New York Times and the Washington Post, but the rest of them as well. I don't recall reading about the AUF study that fires couldn't have brought down Building 7. I don't recall seeing that in the New York Times. Am I right about that? And somehow I missed the New York Times' report of the fire commissioner's statement calling for a new inquiry. Is that just, it was in the copy that I get, unhappily get delivered to my apartment? No, they don't report anything like that. It really is not an exaggeration to say that the press, the US press today, our free press, as I always call it with scare quotes, is really comparable to the press in the Third Reich. It really is, in terms of its, you laugh. That's a position I'm actually prepared to demonstrate in great detail, but that is essentially the result of the merger of the Fourth Estate in this country with the intelligence establishment, mainly the CIA, also the DIA, and the CDC, and the FCC, and the FBI, and so on. The second such strategy that I'll just mention very quickly is the infiltration of the critical community and the deliberate sowing of division within that community. Commissioner Gioia mentioned some notions about 9/11 and its responsibility that are sort of groundless and reckless. It's not really a stretch, it doesn't take a stretch of the imagination to assume that some of those notions have been deliberately propagated again, by the intelligence community. So, some of you may have heard of Cass Sunstein, who worked under Obama, and I think probably was hired by the Obama administration because of a piece he wrote when he was at Harvard, advising the tactic of cognitive infiltration, by which he meant deliberately derailing the 9/11 truth movement by posting divisive and hostile and misleading information in their chat rooms and so on. So this is a constitutional scholar who is recommending a covert means of derailing legitimate criticism in what we like to think of as a democracy. That's the second one, but the third one, the one I'm going to focus on, and it's one that Gary mentioned passingly, is the weaponization of the phrase conspiracy theory or conspiracy theorist as a way to make people distrust their own critical faculties, as a way to make people feel they have to apologize for perfectly legitimate suspicions about elite intentions. This brief history lesson, and incidentally, I'm hoping that this these remarks of mine will help to contextualize what we're focusing on today, 9/11 itself. I want to try to place it within the larger context of, what we might call deep state shenanigans, really since 1963, since the Kennedy assassination. In 1967, early 1967, as many of you know, the CIA sent all its station chiefs worldwide a memo 1035/960. What that memo did was advise its station chiefs to help to solve the problem of increasing mass skepticism toward the Warren Commission theory of a lone gunman killing JFK, to try to counter that skepticism basically by defaming those most prominent critics like Mark Lane and others whose works were increasingly widely read, his Rush to Judgment, Sylvia Mayer's Accessories After the Fact, other works that were raising perfectly legitimate questions about the Warren Report. So what the memo basically advised its station chiefs to do was to cultivate their propaganda assets and friends in the media to discredit the work of these conspiracy theorists wherever possible. And then the memo advised a number of what we would call today talking points in order to make these people seem either insane or venal or both, okay? So it's interesting, prior to this memo's release in '67, the phrase conspiracy theory was used only now and then in the US press, and inconsistently, in different ways. Starting in 1967, increasingly, over the decades, ever since, up till the present moment, that phrase, those phrases were used more and more and more, and always in the same way, always to laugh off suggestions, speculations, criticisms that pointed in the direction of high crimes by the US government against democracy, okay? I mean, it's a dramatic shift from rare uses of those phrases to constant, obsessive pounding home of those phrases, to the point that now Americans basically take a kind of sentimental view of executive authority and of the elites, because there's something wrong with you if you doubt the official story. This is kind of a new thing. Let me recommend very strongly Lance DeHaven Smith's great book, Conspiracy Theory in America. I'm proud to say I suggested to him that he write the book. It's published by the University of Texas Press. It's an indispensable book. Now, what this propaganda drive has done, and it is arguably the most successful propaganda drive in American history, because it has not only discredited, disparate kinds of inquiry, but it has discredited across the board any attempt to raise any questions about any official story. It's had a kind of prophylactic effect so that the mind cannot be inseminated by heretical thoughts, And it's a prophylactic that you can only remove with great difficulty and with a lot of pain. Do you know what I'm saying? I know this because I teach. So, students are in visible agony as they, oh, geez, really? All right. So what the conspiracy theory charge has done specifically is to trump, so to speak, trump science. Okay? The mind that has been calcified by the conspiracy theory meme is completely impenetrable by any inconvenient information. That kind of thing just bounces right off your brain. And I have to say that this is actually a worse problem, a more serious problem, and a more dangerous problem among liberals and progressives than it is out on the right, okay? We love to hear, wait, I got to finish, okay? I appreciate the applause, but hold it. I've got so many things to say. You know, we all love to snicker at Republican superstitiousness and the view that America was founded as a Christian nation, or that the universe is 6,000 years old. And we chortle about this. We think, oh, those right-wingers, they're so stupid. They don't believe in science. Well, actually, it's most liberals who are actually far more subject to ludicrously unscientific notions and much more dangerous notions than people on the right, okay? And this goes back to the Kennedy assassination, okay? This is where much begins, okay? What we're dealing with today and trying to tell some truth about 9/11 points back to 1963, the propagation of this preposterous notion that Lee Harvey Oswald himself killed JFK, something that 2/3 of the American people no longer believe. The New York Times believes it as religiously as ever, right? I mean, I don't know what kind of blood oaths they have to take to join that workforce, but it's the same with well, actually not the Washington Post, but the Times in particular is stuck in the 60s, still flogging the Warren Report. And of the many absolutely preposterous notions on which that narrative depends, the most ridiculous is the magic bullet theory, right? You've all heard this. The same bullet, went through Kennedy and changed course and turned around and went through various parts of John Connally's body and then ended up on a stretcher in pristine condition. Yeah, that's right. Very scientific. That's not junk science, right? That's right, not junk science. So John Kennedy was shot in the front from the back, right? And then Bobby Kennedy was shot in the back from the front, right? Sirhan, you may have heard, was stabbed in the neck, right, in the prison where they're keeping him. The New York Times reported this, repeated the same bullshit about how it was Sirhan who shot Kennedy. The coroner of LA County, Thomas Noguchi, ruled that the fatal shot in Bobby Kennedy's case came from the rear, going upward a couple of inches from the back of his head. Sirhan was about 6 feet in front of Bobby, firing wildly in all directions, okay? And we're supposed to believe that he was the one who killed RFK? That's also an example of junk science, right? As is the NIST report on the collapse of Building 7. On its face, laughable, ridiculous. What if it had been Putin who put out that argument, right? Would anybody have any trouble saying, oh, that's absurd? No, but it happens here. See, under the spell of the conspiracy theory meme, we feel we have to apologize if we suspect that the official, or admit that the official story is completely ridiculous. Now, I can rush through a number of other examples. There's Russiagate, okay? That is actually a conspiracy theory in the sense of the memo. I mean, it's a completely ridiculous theory with no scientific basis, and which has been authoritatively debunked by the VIPS study, VIPS study, that Bill Binney was part of, which demonstrated that the DNC emails vanished too quickly from that database to have been a hack. It was a download. And it was probably Seth Rich who downloaded it. I mean, that's a name we're not supposed to mention, because that's conspiracy theory, right? We could then move from Russiagate to the problem of election theft, which has been demonstrably carried out time and time again in this country, primarily through electronic means by Republican operatives. Russia has nothing to do with it, right? But this is called, again, conspiracy theory. It can't possibly be true. Gary mentioned vaccines, okay? Here again, it is liberals, it is the liberal state of California that has just passed SB 276, the most draconian law against vaccine exemptions in the whole country, right? There is no scientific evidence to support the massive attacks on infant bodies with dozens of vaccines, right? Should I keep going? All right. Well, Epstein, they've kind of jumped the shark with Epstein, if you know what I mean, right? It's a bridge too far. Although I have to say that while the evidence is sort of compelling that he did not kill himself, but was murdered, we also have to entertain the possibility that he wasn't killed at all and that he got away. I feel like I'm being asked to play certain hits, you know. The cell phone radiation, which the New York Times has laughed off, it's not a problem at all. There's 5G, which Gary mentioned, which is terrifyingly dangerous, for which there is not abundant scientific evidence against its use, and the New York Times has outrageously promoted it as perfectly safe. I reckon in part because its largest single shareholder, Carlos Slim of Mexico, made his billions on the cell phone trade south of the border. It's also a fact that the New York Times has a business deal with Verizon to set up a 5G lab, okay? That couldn't have anything to do with this unconscionable promotion of an extremely dangerous technology, which is really basically going to enable the government to seize all of our data more quickly, you know, using our microwaves and all the other stuff that's part of the Internet of Things. There's also, there's also transgenderism. I don't mean transgender persons. I have colleagues, friends who are transgender. I'm talking about the ideology, the movement, the notion that you can become a woman if you just say you're one, you know, which is an essentially misogynistic move that is posing a grave threat to women's and girls' athletics, which is a tremendous, highly profitable boon to big pharma and the medical industrial complex. We're talking about dire medical intervention in the lives and minds of very young children. It is a grotesque delusion to claim that the transgenderist ideology has any scientific basis at all. Here again, it's promoted mainly by liberals and opposed by the right and as radical feminists as well. Okay, I only have a couple minutes left. Now, what I want to note here is that what I'm describing is actually getting exponentially worse as we sit here. More dangerous. The FBI recently came out with a statement that conspiracy theories comprise a new domestic terrorism threat. I don't know if you've heard this. And they talk about those whose thinking is, quote, you'll love this, at odds with official or prevailing explanations of events. Okay? This makes everyone in this room a domestic terrorism threat. DARPA, the Defense Advanced Research Projects Agency, helped invent the internet, is now working on a means of ensuring that we know, thanks to them, thanks to the Pentagon, that we know what's true and what isn't. Okay? We're talking about the militarization of thinking, of consciousness. This is something that George Orwell could not have imagined in his wildest dreams. It is a kind of surveillance of unimaginable scale and sophistication and exquisiteness working through our cell phones and our computers. And we are talking, therefore, about a move whose lethal impact is incalculable. Now, the delusions of the right that the universe is 6,000 years old, I mean, it's unfortunate, but it is nowhere near as dangerous. It does not have anywhere near, could not have anywhere near the genocidal impact that has been, that we can basically attribute to the lies that have been pushed by the state over the last half century or so, endless wars promoted and enabled by these lies. 9/11 and the war on terror is only the latest chapter in this long history. The movement has had its martyrs, Barry Jennings, Philip Marshall, and there have been countless people who've been fired because of their adherence to the truth. As frightening as our opposition is, we are obliged to continue to stick to the truth, to speak the truth, no matter what they try to bring against us, because ultimately, inevitably, the truth will triumph. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Mark Crispin Miller. Very good. Rachel Hughes was a first responder, and she's very sick today. She told me she has 9 different ailments or sicknesses diagnosed from working as a first responder at Ground Zero on 9/11. So if we're ready to bring Rachel on, please do.
I want to thank all those speaking here today, all the production people and the audience, near and far. I really made a huge attempt to be there in person with all of you. I've been seeing doctors for immune treatments out of state, and I spent actually all day yesterday traveling to try to get up to New York City. I made it as far as Washington, D.C. before symptoms elevated with headache and fever, and I have excessive neuropathy pain. So it made continuing my travels up there today impossible, but I wish I was there. Before I begin, I have like a 1-minute disclaimer. I'm here because I've been chronically and systemically ill from my time volunteering in the 9/11 toxic dust. But before I formally introduce myself and further share details of my 9/11 health journey, I'd like to apologize in advance if I become emotional or need to pause a moment. I'm not a hysterical or overly emotional person. I'm logical, creative, striving for wellness and balance. And because love is the essence of the soul, and we cannot have love without truth, I'm a truth seeker. And I want this in my life. I want love and I want truth in my life. For the next 10 to 15 minutes or so, please bear with me. I'm sorry if I go too slow or need to pause. I have throat and lung pain on every breath, the pain and fatigue to exert the pain and fatigue to exert this kind of energy is excruciating. And well, the topic of 9/11 toxin exposure, the 9/11 illnesses, now called the World Trade Center syndrome, it has been re-victimizing us for 18 years. And that is an emotional grief I carry that affects my ability to speak smoothly and even to face this entire injustice. Everything I am sharing here is my humble opinion. I am not for any government politics that is used to divide we the people. So please do not align me with any ineffective, greedy religion or organization or any political party. I'm no longer a party affiliate of the Democrats or the Republicans. I'm not aligned with any president or Congress or Senate members, though I wish I could be. I'm disgusted by all infiltrators harming us, our children, and our world. I'm for those who seek root causes and provide solutions that empower humanity to thrive, regardless of race, religion, or political affiliations. Because these are not the Democrats of our JFK who vowed to end the Federal Reserve and dismantle the corrupt alphabet agencies. These are not the Republicans who claim to be serving God as the Christian base. In my humble opinion, we have all been made fools of by snarky infiltrators. With maybe, I don't know, 20% in government who still have their human souls intact. And for me, I align with God as the energy of love. The love that embodies truth, justice, wellness, balance, and all that is good and truly righteous. And that is what I choose to align with in this battle to expose 9/11 and restore our human rights. The corruption against us is all interconnected. And it's up to us, we the people, sovereign in our right to freedom and the pursuit of happiness. We cannot let anti-American traitors divide us further. And to protect our human rights, we must find the issues that bring us together. We must take back our power as one nation under God of love and truth, unified to expose and remove those that seek to destroy our lives. We are all mind, soul, body, and this is our United States. We are America the Beautiful. I am simply a patriot, a citizen seeking truth and justice. I'm terrified of public speaking. My racing heart aches, and I want to put my head in the sand and hide from all this corruption. But I've learned there is healing in sharing, and that is why I started speaking out. In 2005 with the 9/11 Dust and Deceit film, and in 2011 with the 9/11 Healing Journey film, both done by filmmaker Penny Little with the support of Mr. Walter and a great team of patriots. But did the public hear about our films? Few did, because our films were hijacked, dragged through court, and our sick and dying voices censored, making it even more difficult for us to get proper medical help for the root causes of the 9/11 illnesses that we're suffering from. I do not know how much more time I will have in this life. This is why I attempted to drag my aching, painful, toxin and drug-affected, misshapen body to be with you all today. I failed, so we have found another way, and I'm grateful for that. I wanted to be front and center with you all. Even now, sick from bed, I'm letting my voice be heard. Investigation. So, hi everyone. Don't think it ends there. That was just a disclaimer. As over the years, many have tried to twist my words and disregard my voice with political excuses. Now I will attempt to summarize my journey. In the last 18 years, those of us suffering from the 9/11 toxins have endured. My name is Rachel. I'm a citizen of the United States of America. That means I'm a person loyal to my country and entitled by birth or legal immigration to be protected by our states and nation. I am entitled to my sovereign human rights. I'm not sharing my story to evoke people to feel sorry for me, because I can do that all on my own, as I have endured the systemic pain and chronic symptoms caused by the 9/11 toxins now for 18 years. I'm here for a call to action and share how horrific the symptoms of the World Trade Center syndrome have been, because along with thousands of other 9/11 first responders and volunteers, and those fighting for our lives, like John Fiel and his team, so much gratitude. But we still need help. I need help. I need help so I do not die prematurely. I need the proper detox and immune boosting treatments, which I have not been able to afford consistently. And these treatments are still not covered by the 9/11 health programs. There are wellness protocols that we have been prevented from receiving, even though there are treatments that can help us be well again, or at least get some quality of life back. I live on $1,300 a month disability and Medicare, and have to choose between homelessness or paying out of pocket for the IV immune treatments that lessen my symptoms. I have sold everything I own of value to pay out of pocket for these weekly treatments, to the point of losing my homes to foreclosure, my car to repossession, my retirement fund down to zero. I am no longer the healthy, energized, vibrant person I was on September 10th, 2001. I've lost everything that I worked for in my life. Recently, because of the diligence of John Field's team fighting 18 years, you guys, 18 years for the medical support we need, we were granted an extended funding of the 9/11 treatment programs. That was step one of the battle for 9/11 victims to be cared for. That took 18 years, and now more people have died of the toxin illnesses. More people have died of the 9/11 toxin illnesses than died on the day of September 11th, and the murders continue. Step two is we need the treatments that work to get us well. These must be covered by the funding, instead of forcing us to accept prescription-based treatment that causes additional debilitating symptoms. Step two needs to happen immediately, or more of us will continue to suffer and die at a rapid rate. We need proper medical care that addresses the root cause of our illness, which is toxin poisoning. Once in the 9/11 health program, my requests for the treatments that were previously working were denied, and I was given prescription-based treatments to band-aid symptoms, but not given the detoxing and immune building that is required to heal from a toxin exposure. I was in so much distress physically and dealing with PTSD and mentally trying to overcome situational depression from the loss of my healthy life that I was desperate. So I tried everything the 9/11 treatment program told me to do, and my health worsened. I could no longer live full-time in New York City in my home. It was too dirty. My lungs were failing me. My body could no longer regulate temperature, and I couldn't be in too cold or too hot environments. I subletted my home in Brooklyn and went to see more affordable doctors out of state who focused on detoxing and immune building. Because of this, it was suggested by the 9/11 program advisors that I enter the National 9/11 Health Insurance Program. As soon as I did that, my certified diagnosis records went missing, and they have refused to cover any of my treatments with the exception of asthma, which they will give me inhaler Band-Aids, but refuse to cover the nebulizer treatment or the oxygen or the IV immune boost that reduce all the symptoms of asthma and COPD. I was diagnosed with adrenal insufficiency in 2004 and have multiple doctor's letters to the World Trade Center program telling them that if I do not get the toxins removed and the immune rebuilt, that I could end up with Addison's disease and more complicated illnesses. In 2008, my adrenal function failed, and I am now kept alive on steroid medications because I never got the treatments that I needed. So from 2005 to 2009, because I was told to apply for 9/11 World Trade Center workers' compensation, I had to take the money from that check and apply it to pay out of pocket for the treatments that were working. Following the treatments that help reduce symptoms and could potentially restore my health, it takes about 30 hours a week. 2 hours of lymphatic drainage every morning, kidney and liver flushes during the day and at night, GI detoxes, and 3 IV immune boosts weekly, with every third week doing chelation to slowly, safely remove the 9/11 toxins. I was managing this with the support of doctors that the 9/11 medical programs refused to reimburse. I was told I had to go to 9/11 Workers' Compensation Court to apply for added benefits in 2009. I entered the workers' comp court system of lying judges and corrupt attorneys. And I'm calling all of you out because this is wrong. It's wrong what has happened to all of us. Instead of helping me, they stopped my payments, and I've been dragged through court for over 10 years now. A few years ago, because I have all my records, all the copies, to prove what I need, a workers' compensation judge finally ruled in my favor for 1/3 of the money I paid out of pocket to be reimbursed to me. This was around $100,000 plus, and it's on the court record. To gain the full amount, I would still have to provide more records, which I could get. And I was so grateful and so hopeful that at least with a partial reimbursement, I would be able to start my treatments up again. But right after that ruling, my attorney disappeared, stopped returning my emails and calls, and a letter came from workers' comp stating that they didn't agree with the judge's findings and were not going to make the payment that the court had ordered. Soon after that, my home went into foreclosure. I had no car, no health insurance to cover what I needed to get well. Seeking wellness solutions on my own has bankrupted me to the point of homelessness because I must choose paying out of pocket for medical treatments that work or a place to live. The money they say is for us, they say that is for us, is going to the pharmaceutical industry. And the 9/11 workers' compensation court system has further destroyed my life. Today, I'm unrecognizable. The vibrant, energized, successful person I once was has been taken from me. Today, I look in the mirror and I can't see me. I know I'm in here. I know I'm in here somewhere, but my soul is struggling to live in an energy and oxygen-starved body. But somewhere there is still a small flame, a little light that I cling to, as many others do. We are struggling to survive. And I still have hope that I can thrive again, but I know I need the right treatments. I'm asking every human being, every citizen, to stop allowing the infiltrators and deceivers to have power over us, dividing us. I say no more. No more will I be silent. No more will we allow a few to enslave us and harm us. No more.
Rachel, thank you very much.